The cafe was filled with warm sunlight pouring through tall glass windows, the gentle hum of conversations blending with the soft clinking of coffee cups. People laughed, couples smiled, and strangers hurried past without noticing the quiet miracle that was about to unfold. At a small table near the window, a woman tightened her trembling hands in her lap, silently preparing herself for the familiar look of disappointment she had seen too many times before. When the man she had come to meet finally walked toward her, her heart raced. Before he could sit down, she gathered every ounce of courage she had left and whispered the words she had practiced all morning. "Sorry. I'm in a wheelchair." She expected another awkward apology, another excuse, another lonely afternoon. Instead, what happened next would change two broken lives forever. Before we continue this unforgettable story, if you believe kindness is stronger than appearances and that everyone deserves a second chance, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you love, and subscribe to Heartwarming Tales. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that remind the world compassion still exists. Clara Whitmore had never imagined that her life would become divided into two chapters, before the accident and after it. 3 years earlier, she had been an energetic wildlife photographer who spent every weekend hiking forests, climbing hills, and chasing golden sunsets with her camera. She loved movement, adventure, and the freedom of believing tomorrow would always look like today. Then, on an ordinary spring afternoon, a careless driver ignored a red light, and everything changed within seconds. Months of surgeries, endless rehabilitation, and painful acceptance followed. Her legs no longer obeyed her, but the hardest wound wasn't physical. It was watching people slowly stop seeing the confident woman she once was and begin seeing only the wheelchair. Friends who once invited her everywhere gradually disappeared. Relationships faded under the weight of pity and discomfort. She learned that loneliness could fill even the brightest rooms. Although she forced herself to smile for her parents and younger sister, each evening ended the same way, with silence, unanswered hopes, and the quiet fear that nobody would ever choose her again. Still, Clara refused to surrender completely. She rebuilt her photography business, specializing in portraits and family memories. Through her camera, she captured happiness for others while quietly wondering if she would ever experience it herself again. Every photograph reminded her that love still existed, even if it seemed to pass her by. It was her cheerful coworker who finally convinced her to try online dating. Clara resisted for months. She knew what usually happened. The moment people discovered she used a wheelchair, conversations became shorter. Plans mysteriously changed. Messages stopped arriving altogether. Eventually, she agreed to create a profile, but she chose honesty over perfection. One of her first photos showed her sitting confidently in her wheelchair beneath a blooming cherry tree. She refused to hide the truth. Hundreds of people scrolled past without responding. Some unmatched immediately after reading her profile. Others sent messages filled with sympathy instead of genuine curiosity. Then one evening, a notification appeared from someone named Rowan Mercer. Rowan's profile was surprisingly simple. A 38-year-old elementary school teacher. Widowed. Father of an 8-year-old daughter named Hazel. Lover of old books, rainy afternoons, and homemade pancakes. There were no expensive vacations or flashy cars in his photos. Instead, there were messy baking sessions with his daughter, school events, and pictures of rescue dogs from the local shelter. Their conversations felt different from the beginning. Rowan asked about Clara's favorite places to photograph instead of asking what happened to her legs. He wanted to know which books made her cry, which songs reminded her of childhood, and whether she preferred sunrise or sunset. For the first time in years, Clara laughed while texting someone. After nearly 3 weeks of conversations, Rowan suggested meeting for coffee. As the day approached, Clara's confidence slowly faded. Memories of previous disappointments returned one by one. She wondered if he had really looked closely at her profile. Maybe he hadn't noticed the wheelchair. Maybe today would end exactly like every other attempt. That morning, she almost cancelled 3 separate times. Instead, she chose a deep burgundy dress that reminded her she was still beautiful. She carefully styled her hair, applied just enough makeup to feel confident, and attached a tiny silver camera charm to her bracelet, a quiet reminder that she was still the same dreamer she had always been. When she rolled into the cafe, she arrived nearly 20 minutes early. Every passing minute felt heavier than the last. Then Rowan walked through the door. He looked exactly like his pictures, kind eyes, slightly messy brown hair, and the tired expression of someone carrying responsibilities with quiet strength. He searched the room until their eyes met. Clara immediately noticed something that surprised her. There was no hesitation in his face. Still, fear whispered louder than hope. Before Rowan could sit down, Clara apologized for existing the way the world had taught her to. She softly admitted she was in a wheelchair, almost as though asking forgiveness for something she could never change. Rowan stopped for only a heartbeat before smiling with remarkable gentleness. He calmly explained that he already knew because he had actually read every word of her profile. Then he admitted something unexpected. He wasn't looking for someone who could run marathons or climb mountains. He was looking for someone kind enough to help build a peaceful home for a little girl who still cried herself to sleep missing her mother. Those simple words reached places inside Clara that years of encouragement never could. Throughout the afternoon, they forgot about time. They spoke about grief without trying to fix each other. Rowan shared how cancer had taken his wife far too young, leaving him to become both father and mother overnight. Every school recital reminded him of the empty seat beside him. Every birthday carried both celebration and heartbreak. Clara shared the invisible loneliness that followed disability. She confessed that strangers often admired her courage without understanding how exhausting it was to appear strong every single day. Neither interrupted. Neither judged. For once, 2 wounded people simply listened. As they prepared to leave, Rowan glanced toward the cafe entrance where a small girl waited beside an elderly woman. Hazel had insisted on secretly seeing the woman her father couldn't stop talking about. The little girl slowly approached Clara with nervous curiosity. Children often stared at wheelchairs, but Hazel didn't. Instead, she noticed the camera charm hanging from Clara's bracelet. Her eyes sparkled. She quietly admitted she loved taking pictures with her little instant camera. Clara smiled and promised that one day she would teach her how to capture sunlight through trees. That innocent promise planted a seed none of them could yet understand. Over the following months, weekends slowly transformed into treasured traditions. Clara taught Hazel photography by exploring parks, flower gardens, and lakes during bright sunny afternoons. Rowan watched from nearby benches, amazed by how naturally the two laughed together. Hazel never saw the wheelchair first. She saw the storyteller behind the camera. She saw the woman who patiently waited for butterflies instead of chasing them. She saw someone who celebrated tiny moments most adults ignored. One afternoon, while photographing ducks beside a peaceful lake, Hazel slipped her tiny hand into Clara's and whispered that she wished every Saturday could last forever. Those words brought unexpected tears to Rowan's eyes. For years, he had feared nobody would ever love his daughter the way she deserved. For years, Clara believed nobody would ever choose her because of what she had lost. Now, without either of them realizing it, healing was quietly happening. Life, however, rarely changes without testing new beginnings. Months later, Rowan's extended family gathered for his father's birthday. Although most welcomed Clara warmly, one distant relative made a careless remark suggesting that Rowan's life would become more difficult if he chose someone who needed assistance herself. The room fell silent. Old fears rushed back into Clara's heart. She prepared herself to quietly leave before anyone felt uncomfortable. But Rowan stood. With calm confidence, he explained that strength had nothing to do with walking. He said the strongest person he knew was sitting beside him, the woman who rebuilt her entire life after unimaginable loss, inspired a little girl to smile again, and taught him that courage often arrived quietly instead of loudly. Nobody argued after that. Some lowered their eyes in shame. Others quietly nodded in agreement. Clara realized something extraordinary. For the first time since her accident, someone had defended her not because she was fragile, but because she was valuable. Months passed. Love grew slowly, gently, and honestly. One golden afternoon beneath the very cherry tree where Clara had once photographed herself alone, Rowan arranged a family picnic. Hazel excitedly insisted they all take one more picture together. As Clara adjusted the camera timer, she turned around to find Rowan kneeling, not because she was in a wheelchair, but because he wanted to ask the most important question of his life. Tears filled Clara's eyes before he even opened the small velvet box. Hazel wrapped both arms around Clara and whispered that she already felt like family. There were no grand crowds. No dramatic music. Only warm sunshine, gentle laughter, and three hearts finally finding the home they had searched for in different ways. Years later, visitors entering Clara's photography studio often noticed